Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be speaking very briefly, and this is a safe space for me, so I'll not be very theoretical. I'll just talk for 10 minutes or less if I can. I have another engagement across the hall. So my name is Tobechukwu, as you heard. I've been in the social work space for about 10 years. In the course of my work in Niger Delta, I've been kidnapped at least 2 times. I've visited at least 78 remote communities in the Niger Delta region. Next month, we are going to the north, Niger State specifically. My journey began and it's a safe space. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to share my concerns, right? The climate change conversation and the energy transition conversation in Nigeria is two-sided. We have a lot of people that don't believe that climate change is an issue. We have a lot of people that believe that climate change is an issue. And so over time, we've been in this struggle about what is relevant. Should we be talking about climate change when people have not eaten? Should we be talking about climate change and energy when people are looking for, trying to buy Gary? So we've had those kind of conversations, which has made a lot of our work in this space very difficult, because the reality of the fact is that the system has always been hijacked. And this is where Africa needs to now begin to take ownership of the system. I did a coverage in 2022 on flooding in Nigeria, and for the first time I was on ground in Bayelsa State. And that documentary, that research work changed my life forever. When you are videoing, when they are pulling people out of water, dead people, right? And you are hearing in the IDP camps, you're hearing mothers looking for their children. There was a particular story that was so captivating that because a lot of people, when you see the news, people don't really understand how deep it is, right? When you see, like, for example, this last flood in Niger State, we heard that about 300 people died. 300 people died, and there were about 700 people unaccounted for. It's like numbers when you see it on TV. But if you're on ground and you have to see the pile up of those bodies, this is not kidnapping, this is not violence, this is climate-related deaths. There's a particular mother that I became close to, right? It was a flash flood in Bayelsa State. She was sleeping and woke up in the morning with her 3 children floating in her room, dead. And I saw that. She said, come and see my children. And I saw that. And that's with many others now began my journey into understanding, because in the social workspace, there's what we call cause and effects. Because a lot of what we do is we treat the effects, but we do not understand the cause. And so I went into deep research. For the first 2 years, I shut down. I said, look, I'm not doing anything until I really understand what climate change is about, how it affects us in Africa and Nigeria, and how we can now develop our unique solutions. Because a lot of what you see in the environmental space, in the energy transition space, is a copy and paste model, where people just read a book written by one scientist in the US that has not faced hunger, that doesn't even know what mosquito bites is like, that does not understand anything, and then he writes the book, and then you carry it and you start advocating based on their information without even knowing how it applies to your own village. And so a lot of what I began to do is to, first of all, understand what is peculiar to us in Nigeria, what is peculiar to us in Africa. And I discovered that the greatest problem we have are 2 things. It's an adaptation crisis, because scientifically, the entire Africa contributes less than 5% to the climate crisis. So I'm not even talking about Nigeria, I'm talking about the entire Africa. So we are not the cause of this crisis, but we are the worst impacted by this crisis. And there's a framework under the United Nations plan, which is called loss and damage. So the first thing that was supposed to happen is that the polluter should pay for the damage, and that's the construct. It's a provision there. So I started going into loss and damage evaluation, trying to do research on, okay, how do we get the polluters to build back these communities, which has been a struggle. I've been fighting that fight for. There was a particular research I did, and it takes me back to, and this is where I'm going to round up, because I'm really very passionate about this issue. That I begin to go too deep. I'll say things I'm not supposed to say, right? I wanted to say that recently I'm in Abuja because I'm part of the committee that is fighting for reserved seats for women. I see a lot of women here. I think I'm the only man in that committee, right? So about 40 of us. That was inaugurated by the Honorable Speaker. So, and my commitment there is because I've seen the injustice done to women in local communities. That you see IDP camps, and I was telling somebody that IDP camps, most of the victims you see, they are women and children. But you come to the CDC Council at the lowest level of decision making, and they will tell you women are not allowed to those halls. And it's the challenge we face. But that takes me back to this. We now need in Africa to begin to design our unique solution. I did a loss and damage evaluation in Delta State, and a particular 2 communities in Delta States, where we stayed there for about 3 weeks. We evaluated what they lost. We created a pathway for them to come out, recover from flood. And at the end of the evaluation, I wrote to a funder, European Union, right? I wrote to a couple of people, and I received a message back. And that message was that we sent so government about $2 million for flood victims in this community. And 1 naira, the community people didn't see. So I began to look at that and say, what is actually the problem of Africans, right? And I saw that most times I was at Azerbaijan last year, COP29, I spoke, and you see a lot of African people, Nigerian people lobbying. When they come, our pavilion at the conference, if you have ever gone to conference of party, to do an event in our pavilion, you pay at least 5 million as a Nigerian. But we did an event in Sweden's pavilion that was completely free. So Nigerians that even in those meetings cannot even host conferences in Nigerian pavilion. So you see that there's the greatest problem that we have is Africa against Africans. And until we begin to, first of all, design our unique path for energy transition, for community development, for grassroots development, that we sit down with community members, we develop a framework that is unique to the communities, unique to the country, and unique to the zone. And then we push that, because what we do a lot of time is copy and paste. They say we should do this, we carry it. You go to a community that has been reading by flood, and you're going to tell them, plant more trees. And you say, which other trees are we planting that is more than, this is practically a forest, right? And it's a lot of what environmental advocates do. Or you go to a community that nothing concerns them, and you begin to tell them, don't ride car, begin to ride bicycle, off your light. Where do I even see the light safe? So it's because of this, and you still see this colonial syndrome even in the development space, that African developers do not have our unique voice, and everything is a copy and paste. You see what is happening with the GMO conversations? Everything is slavery, because we are looking for funding, because we are looking for people that will fund us, and we are channeling the injustice that we are supposed to be fighting against. And the sad part is that when I went to cover Delta State flood, in the IDP camps, it was a terrible moment that you will see people actually fencing in the line to collect food. If you have ever been to an IDP camp, the sight is horrible. And you see the Nigerians that are supposed to be compassionate and have empathy for these people who are already vulnerable. They will be telling you, who are you going to vote for? That was election period, 2022. Before we give you food, you must show us your party card. And you see things like that. You see that they will bring a van of rice, and before the thing comes there, the NGO people and the developers would have taken 70% of it to their homes, and you begin to understand that, look, the problem we have, and at some point, I got tired of always blaming the colonial masters. I said, look, Africa has done a lot of injustice to Africans. And until we now begin to look inwardly, and stop this slavery mentality where everybody's looking for fund, to start really looking for people that really care about community people. We'll just have a circle of oppressor empowering NGOs and social workers who will end up oppressing the community people, paying a few people, snap few pictures, and you still rotate back to the same model. And you see that it's just a circle of injustice, a circle of hardship, and won't be able to move forward until Africans now begin to become real stewards of our development. Thank you so much. That's my time.